AAA gaming is doing bad things once again. Wow, who would have expected?
Today we've got a really important story actually. It impacts all of us, and you've probably seen headlines like this one, right? Quote, publishers are absolutely terrified that preserved video games would be used for recreational purposes. That's actually a quote. So the US
That sounds very bad. What? I mean, that they don't like this sentence. What do you...
Copyright Office has struck down a major effort for game preservation. That's a big headline, but do you know what's even worse? It barely
It's gonna be funny when Elon Musk strikes down that whole existence of that part of the government.
begins to cover how stupid, how frustrating this entire situation is. What it is the industry dragon that is the ESA, ensuring that the business side of gaming is firmly suppressing the art side. And what makes this so ridiculous, infuriating, and absolutely malicious is the fact that 87% of video games before 2010 are no longer commercially available. So ESA, what are you hoarding? Okay, let's
The answer to that is actually, yes, this is. The answer to that is ridiculously easy. As everything in American government, the whole point of this is just control. And trust me, the government does want to control your video games. And there's a very good reason for that. Because they can use it as a tool to get people to enlist in the military. They can get it. They can use it as a way to do all sorts of things to navigate the user's psyche and kind of push them in the right direction, or at the bare minimum, nudge them. Again, games have been used as vehicles for recruitment into, well, the army and a bunch of other places. Okay, anyone remember the Cicada 33101 or whatever the number was thing? Yeah, that potentially was a FBI recruitment tool and things like that. And things like that can be used in gaming. The government wants to control game companies, so there's not a lot of reason to have multiple game companies. They want to cut down the companies as much as possible, like banking. They don't actually want there to be 100 banks. They want there to be like 3 banks or some shit like that, so they can easily control them. Because the moment that these banks say, no, we're not going to do anything like you want us, well, they can just kind of obliterate them off the face of the earth with investigations and things like that. And the same thing is true for gaming. So, gaming preservation means absolutely nothing for them.
solution. But now for the bit that should make all of our blood boil. This restriction is not applied to any other medium, right? No other art form. Film? Nope. Television? Nope. Books? Nope. It turns out that from a legal perspective, games are uniquely punished.
Yes.
They are uniquely under attack. And the Software Preservation Network wants to improve this. The people who don't want to improve it are the ESA. The ESA suck. They have been long-time industry villains, and we're going to talk a lot about them today. And we're not just preserving video games, we are preserving our wrinkly gamer brains, and doing so with today's sponsor, who are going to help you transform...
Wait, wasn't there already a sponsor? Oh, there wasn't.
Let's get into the story. To start this off, we gotta be on the same page. So here's how the whole shebang works. Every 3 years, the US Copyright Office offers the chance for changes to be made to how copyright is applied. And obviously, it's in the US, but that matters because, yeah, most of the games happen in the US. Now, in January 2024, the heroes of today's video, the Software Preservation Network, they began attempting to get their petition forward to the Copyright Office. They had 2 asks. These are basically tweaks to the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. Their first one is to allow multiple simultaneous remote users for non-game software, and their second ask to allow for remote access to video games for the purposes of research and education. So in simple terms, what they're basically saying is, hey, Copyright Office, we would like it if multiple people could check out software, non-game software, like say an application or an operating system in a remote fashion, and multiple users could do that, you know, for academic research. And the second ask is, could people remotely access video games for academic purposes? Because, you know, games are art. They matter, and if we look at the past, we might just learn and have better games. So here's the wild thing. Currently, libraries can preserve and distribute video games, but it's crazy the limitations. They can only physically do it with the original software and hardware, and they can't lend them. They cannot lend them, right? So a library would effectively have to maintain piles of
Yeah, I kind of know this. Also, good times, bruh, bruh. Oh my god, going out of the tunnel, not looking at that.
legacy hardware. That's just not going to happen. I'll be actually blunt here. This is worse than useless. The only people who can research video games are people who live near a magical gaming library with loads of things, or that build a private collection out of pocket. And even that's kind of bad, because preservation without access is a bit like arguing that Smaug the Defiler, or whatever he was called in Tolkien, was preserving the riches of Erebor for future generations by making
I mean, he technically was. You can't really argue that one.
sure nobody else could have them. It's not preservation, it's hoarding, and while individual collectors may be really good people and lend the games out, that's not a real solution. But now for the bit that should make all of our blood boil.
Okay.
Time to introduce today's villain. The Entertainment Software Association, ESA, is a body that represents most major devs and publishers in America, and you may remember them from...
Oh wow, when you watch the video like this, because I skipped the part that we should have watched, there's a lot of backtracking and time padding by saying the same shit. Wow, I actually didn't notice that, but now it's kind of blatant.
Plenty of little dramas. They had an amazing one where they leaked the information, right, of all the press people from E3 signups. So that was pretty damn bad. And of course, E3 in general. They were actually running that, and they had a complete inability to make E3 a sustainable event that would work. Which is insane, because it's not like loads of other groups have, actually managed to do that successfully for years. No.
Also, isn't E3 like, well, wasn't it one of the biggest ones back in the day at the bare minimum?
The ESA are just useless morons. But the point is, they're not here for us. They're actually not here for video games either. They are not interested in games as a medium. To the ESA, games are an industry only, and they will have no problem suppressing the overall impact and success of video games in the long run, if that means they're seen to be protecting the short-term interest of their members, because their members are not you and me. Their members are not a regular developer working at some big company. No. Their members are corporate entities, so if you're an indie developer, a gamer, if you just want to do a startup, the ESA should be your friend, but they're not your friend. Now, this is why their arguments against the software...
Is anyone honestly surprised by this? I kind of feel I ain't.
Preservation network are so infuriating. The ESA is essentially arguing that games are not a medium worthy of academic study. Here's some words from the ruling.
That is stupid. Remember World of Warcraft when the first time the Hakar plague happened? Yeah, places, like legitimate places. I think even like Pfizer or other places like that use that as a real life study what would happen with a massive outbreak of a similar nature in real life, because it was mimicking real life perfectly. How people created small encampments in the outskirts of cities and things like that. It was pretty wild. How some people tried to help others, and some people intentionally wanted to destroy society. It was pretty wild. It was pretty wild.
The ESA's lawyers contended that there would be significant risk that preserved video games would be used for recreational purposes. Oh no! They further argued that the expanded exemption would give preservation institutions too much discretion regarding how they provide remote access to preserved works, and that it did not contain appropriately tailored restrictions to ensure that uses would be limited to teaching, research, or scholarship uses. They believe that removing the premises limitation would adversely affect the existing games market for older games. That's what the ESA had to say. The Copyright Office, of course...
That sounds stupid. It's not... Even if this would be 100% true, like, how much of an impact that would legitimately be? It would not be even probably a feelable impact. No one would care.
agreed, because I suppose that's what they would do, and they explicitly cited the idea of the market for legacy video games
Also, how many
potentially being harmed. And
how many weeks no he has had this on the back of his pate, and well, yeah, I'm kind of pissed.
then they denied the petition, meaning that for the next 3 years,
I mean, balding is one hell of a drug, what can I say? I'm not, thankfully, booyah, but damn.
period, that's it, petition failed. Now, this was always going to be the ESA's defense, and in fact, in May 2024, IGN spoke to an ESA lawyer about this case because basically they saw similar arguments in 2018 and 2021. Here is what they learned, and I'll read from their reporting. The spokesperson told me that the trade group absolutely sees games as art, but also as copyrighted works. Quote, that means that universal preservation must always be balanced against the rights of copyright owners to make business decisions about the legacy market. Now, you can see how they could make that argument, but as we'll very soon see, it actually falls completely to pieces under scrutiny. Now, they could point to having over 2,500 games that they donated to the Library of Congress, which does mean, I suppose, that if you live in Washington, D.C., congrats, you're actually one of the few people in the country with a support network to become an ESA-approved games academic. Now, this happened in 2018, right?
Not like anyone in DC cares.
It failed. In 2021, it failed. But something is actually changing. In 2024, the Software Preservation Network actually came ready for combat. At the start of the video, I mentioned the 87% number, and that's from the video game availability study that was prepared in 2023, sponsored by the Software Preservation Network and the Video Game History Foundation. Now, they found that yes, 87% of all video games produced before the year 2010 are not commercially available. That is real worrying. Now, you might think of GOG, right?
Well, I mean, I can still play Zanzirak because I know it's torrentable. Fuck you.
You can buy loads of old games there, but again, we're talking about ones that are not commercially available, so anything on GOG doesn't actually count there. But in fairness to GOG, they're trying, and they just launched a preservation program, but they can't do it alone, not even close. A pillar of the ESA's argument, right, is that publishers of games need legal protections that other art forms don't, right? And they're specifically using the legacy market. But here's the thing, 87% of legacy games before 2010 are not commercially available. So how can they say we need to protect the legacy market when the legacy market is tiny, with the vast majority of games not even being commercially available? If these were all commercially
true, but wouldn't the counter argument to this honestly be the fact that it's made by companies that are out of business now? Well, I guess that wouldn't matter really now, would it? So, I have a feeling that has a kind of easy counterpoint that I'm missing, but, you know, maybe not.
Available, and there was some vibrant way in which we were all just playing random games from 1997 or 2006. Sure, fine. But that's not the case, because they're not commercially available. So that part of ESA's argument absolutely...
Can they also extend this to the future? Because a lot of people are not going to change games. They're going to play the older version instead of the newer one if they don't like something. Can they try to apply it in a super cheeky and evil way to that? Because that's probably what they're honestly all afraid of. The fact that if people have access to these old games that have literally withstood the test of time, that people still love to this day, that people still play to this day, that would just affect the future market viability of these companies, because people would play their old games and not their new games. That is potentially a thing that they most likely fear of, because, you know, otherwise what is there to fear for them? Not much, not anything. Now, it would be a hustle. It would be probably really annoying for these game companies to make it so that you can always download some kind of old game off of their site or whatever. That would be expenses, but it's just, they must have some kind of fucking super evil reason why they don't want
falls to pieces. But what's even more concerning is the Software Preservation Network modeled their arguments based on, funnily enough, exemptions that have been granted to other mediums. So if the exemption is okay for film, for television, for books, why is it not okay for video games? And in short, those are that it would be accredited academic bodies that do the distribution, right? The idea that professional bodies are the gatekeepers. This is overtly not some sort of wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Don't we all love sharing our peer-to-peer files that we completely own and playing them in our Plex server, perfectly above board? And don't we all manually rip ROMs from game carts that we own? Har, 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 free video games. No. The SPN are literally advocating for something that is locked down and responsible because the underlying thing here that actually matters is preservation. They say this: our test is based on the Copyright Office's own proposed rules for what kinds of institutions should be recognized as a library. We don't pull this out of the air. This is the Copyright Office's proposal to define what kinds of institutions should have the special privileges that libraries and archives get in the law. So it's not fair to say that our rules are too broad, because they are not. The SPN are absolutely right. But sadly, all of this was expected following the last two attempts to get this to happen, and the way the ESA behaved during the original hearings earlier this year is telling. The ESA are not interested.
Now, honestly, the funny part is, the ESA, or whatever their name is, they don't actually need to give a fuck about this. They are the governing body of this. They have just the ability to say, no, we don't care, and as far as I know, there's no one you can complain to about it. Except, like, I don't know, the higher courts, but what are the chances of that even working out? You know? Probably not happening. So, if they say no, and their no is arbitrary, then, well, tough luck. You can't really do anything.
In studies, they are not interested in argument. Do you remember that amazing moment from the UK hearing where Electronic Arts' lawyer said the word surprise mechanics, and suddenly it turned into a great meme that we all sort of enjoyed? Well, arguments made, be they in court, to regulators in a special committee, they're often so juicy because they reveal exactly how companies think. So here's what the ESA said, as captured by Ars Technica. Quote, I don't think there is, at the moment, any combination of limitations that ESA members would support to provide remote access, ESA lawyer Steve England said. The preservation organizations want a great deal of discretion to handle very valuable intellectual property. They have yet to show a willingness on their part in a way that might be comforting to the owners of the IP. And I said that with the inflection that I did because that is infuriating, because these exemptions literally are there in other art forms and other mediums. And it's not like some American senator who liked to go and say, oh, games are causing the youth to be violent and all of that stuff from, you know, the early 2000s. It's not like some boomer who hates video games is trying to clamp down on them. No, this is our industry's own body attacking the very medium, the very art form. And that just says it all, doesn't it? It's completely ridiculous. All of this is stacked against the people who are trying to change the rules in copyright, the people who actually care about games as a medium, as an art form, of something worthy of study, such that the next generation of game designers can actually have a good education and we can learn from the mistakes and the wins of this industry. The US Copyright Office will keep things the same unless there is a shift from the industry, regardless of if it's basically them contradicting their own past logic in, say, film and television. The ESA are not interested in any change here.
Again, this is not gonna happen, probably. Well, in any case, I mean, small problems, I guess. Then again, I don't care for game preservation that much, honestly. It is what it is. I think we are at the time where, you know, all of your games are going to be Steam, and the day that the games are not on Steam, congratulations, nuclear war has started, so good luck fucking to everyone. In any case, that was Biller News 10 out of 10. Bye!